This video is for business leaders who want to know what the most successful business tycoons and leaders do for fun and how their own hobbies can increase their own success and in particular their own grit. So watch to the end of this video for bonus material on success, brain enhancing hobbies, and a recommended video on making anything, including your hobbies, more meaningful, fulfilling, and just generally better. So this might seem counterintuitive, but hobbies that are more challenging are more grit building and engaging and fulfilling than hobbies that aren't. So hobbies that are only fun but don't take any effort tend to be actually less grit building and less rewarding for the people engaging in them. So as busy business leaders, getting more bang for your downtime or relaxation buck by choosing better hobbies has a lot of advantages for you, not only in your success, but also just in your recovering and all the good reasons you're actually working so hard and being a leader. So remember that the people who do the hobbies that I'm talking about, these are all famous and very successful people who have the means to choose and engage in any hobby they choose. And it's quite interesting to learn which hobbies they do the most. So what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll list a category, a hobby, and then sort of the neurological and grit building and mastery building benefits to it. I'm going to fire through this pretty quick because the first one took way too long. So the first one is meditation. So meditation is engaged in by Ray Dalio. He does transcendental meditation. Oprah Winfrey, Ariana Huffington, Paul McCartney, Sting, Martin Scorsese, Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, sometimes, but he should do it more. Yes, I'm actually talking to you, Elon. It would be good for you. It would make your life better. It might even enhance your creativity more than it already is, but it would make your life better, not worse. Russell Brand, Susan Sarandon, Steve Jobs, Clint Eastwood, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's a short list. The quick and dirty upshot is almost everything about meditation is fantastic for your brain, your immune system, your cognition, and longer term, in particular, cognition, concentration, focus, and memory. Just more than I can really list or will list. It's super good for your brain. Ideally, you should do it every day and for years on end. And some of the people I've mentioned have been doing it themselves for decades. I do it daily myself, though it hasn't been decades. It's been mostly the last couple of years after not doing it for a long time. Next one is the broader category of sports with specific subcategories because I want to talk about specific individuals. So in the category of sports, golf seems to be the favorite that I could find famous people who do it. That would be Samuel Jackson, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Dennis Quaid, Halle Berry, Michael Jordan, Barack Obama, Bill Murray, and Condoleezza Rice. Golf is a fundamentally challenging activity, so it's potentially grit building if you do it right. And I'm going to focus on that at the end because all of these activities share a lot of commonalities. But bottom line is the distance and the difficulty of doing something like golf well is what makes it potentially a fantastic grit building hobby. The next one is fencing. So a dear and dearly departed friend of mine, Patrick Burke, used to be a fencer and quite advanced. So I know that this is not for the faint of heart in terms of the skill it takes. It's very subtle. The difference between a great fencer and a terrible fencer is superficially small, but in the results, massive. So famous people who do fencing is David Beckham, Tom Cruise, and Will Smith. Apparently, they practice fencing together, or so the main video, and I'll put a link in the description. The source for many of these interesting hobbies came from a particular video I'll put in the description. So Adventure sports, without getting into specifics, Sergey Brin is an adrenaline junkie, so adventure sports in a more general sense. And in particular, Richard Branson is into kite surfing in addition to his other regular hobby of chess. I myself am a very amateur kite surfer, and I can tell you the level of challenge to get off the ground in kite surfing or onto the surface of the water is fairly challenging. So to even participate in the sport is going to take you some real effort. And that, by definition, therefore, is grit building. Sailing. So Larry Ellison of the Oracle CTO and former CEO is a sailor. And if I remember correctly, a competitive sailor in the America's Cup. So at that level, definitely has some grit building. Another far less famous for sailing was Albert Einstein. Cycling, well, Marie and Pierre Curie and Orville and Wilbur Wright. Cycling isn't going to be a lot grit building unless you're doing something very specialized where you need to become challenging. Overall, definitely a great, nice, accessible activity for anybody. Tennis, Bill Gates. Martial arts, Bob Barker used to study or learn karate from Chuck Norris until he became really famous in the movies. Running, Michelle Obama, again, a low bar to get into, but many people who are consistent runners, there is a lot of benefits to it. I'll get into those details later. Hiking, that would be Jack Dorsey. Ping pong, Susan Sarandon. Golfers, well, we already did a massive list on that. That's already done. Musicians. Now, music is in a category by itself if you're playing music. I will put another link in the description that is a short video, a short little TED Talk that talks about all the exceptional benefits of being a musician that is playing music over and above all the benefits you get from just listening to music. Really good for your brain. It's like an all-around training regime. So the people who are musicians that are famous and very successful that you know would be Albert Einstein, played the violin. Warren Buffett plays the ukulele, depending how you say that. Director David Lynch is a musician, though it wasn't specific about what he played, and a coffee roaster. Apparently you can get his coffee at Trader Joe's. Bill Clinton and my niece Lindsay both play saxophone. Former Alibaba CEO Jack Ma is into music and dancing. And finally, Steve Jobs was into guitar. Now, makers and creators. So this is sort of a broader category because I couldn't find a lot in any one, so I put them together. So Samuel Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, was apparently into and interested in fashion and was the inventor of suspenders. Jimmy Carter brewed wine and is into furniture making, or was. Pretty sure he's no longer alive, but in any case, he did that. Kate Middleton, colors. Didn't know there was an adult coloring book thing, but apparently that's a thing nowadays. George W. Bush is into painting. Steve Jobs was into calligraphy and more mundane one in a sense, but interesting to find that Brad Pitt is quite interested in photography as a hobby. Now, collectors, different category, some different benefits, but largely the same. That would be Tom Hanks is into vintage typewriters. Angelina Jolie is into the very unique hobby of collecting daggers since before she was a teenager, or so the source that I will link to in the description describes. A little video about unique hobbies of famous people. Stanley Kubrick was into collecting stationary and writing instruments. It seems in particular the ones that are antique or old or discontinued, but that was his hobby. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was into collecting rugs, and author Ayn Rand is into collecting stamps. Now, another one which I think should be everybody's hobby, because education is one of the things that seems by far the most likely and by far the most agreed upon to be one of the few things you can do to actually increase your fluid intelligence. So your sort of collective overall intelligence is education. So famous readers, exceptionally famous and successful readers would be Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, who apparently reads about 500 pages a day, and Bill Gates, which reads a book a week. Now, I would actually encourage that you get into listening to books, because I went from a book a month to a book a week easily by moving to audiobooks. But ongoing education is always good for your brain and potentially good for your grit. Knitters. This one is a little surprising. Julia Roberts, not so surprising. Ryan Gosling, Christina Hendricks, and Meryl Streep all like to knit, and those who are actors and actresses like to do so while they're waiting around between takes and stuff. So cooks and bakers. Marissa Mayer is into baking, and the famous author Emily Dickinson was also into baking and apparently could make a kick-ass loaf of bread. Gardeners would be Nicole Kidman and actress Jeri Ryan, who you may know as Seven of Nine, as a cyborg, the Borg cyborg from Star Trek Voyager, or many other roles that she's played. So two who are DJs are Elon Musk and David Solomon from Goldman Sachs. For games as hobbies, Bill Gates is famous for playing bridge, and Richard Branson is into chess. Now, movies, this is largely an unworthy category, but in this case, this is a unique one. Thomas Edison loved silent movies, but hated talkies, that is, movies with actual audio tracks. He thought it took away from the media, and that as soon as you had the sound, it made all the talkies apparently had terrible actors, and all the silent films had good actors, at least according to him. So hobbies like movies and shows are typically the least life-enhancing hobbies, the least grit-inducing or mastery-producing, not that great for your brain, but they don't necessarily have to be quite that useless. The fact that you don't have to put in effort and engagement is the fundamental thing that makes them inferior to most hobbies. But then we'll get into reasons and ways that you can make that more so in the bonus material, which starts right now. Thank you for watching and following this far. So basically, this is just going to be, I'm going to ask some questions and then answer those same questions. So what do all of these hobbies tend to have in common? Well, I find it interesting that despite the fact these people have unlimited resources, most of these hobbies are relatively inexpensive. Not all of them, but most of them are relatively inexpensive, easy to get started, and have a minimal requirement for equipment and training. That is, the level of entry into these hobbies, for the most part, are extremely easy, low cost, and low entry point skill level, which is far different than mastery. And quite a few of them are portable. That is, you can take them anywhere, you could travel with them. And probably the most fundamental thing is, with these people having the capacity and means and time to pursue any damn hobby they want, they enjoy the hobbies they do. That intrinsic motivation, your fascination or love for a specific activity, is virtually critical, but certainly very desirable for you to do it, especially if you want to build your grit, which takes that effort and frustration. So you'll pretty much have to love it, or you're likely to quit before you get anywhere advanced with that hobby. So the next one is, what kind of mindsets can help us make the most of our fun? Well, probably the first ones are just being sort of childlike, being interested in things, finding things interesting, and being curious about them. So that will not only help you find better hobbies, but it will also probably give you an unlimited set of potential future hobbies when you haven't seen something before and you go, oh, what's that? I want to try that. That's how it happened for me with kite surfing. So the next one is beginner's mind. So this is also having the humility, whether at your current level, realizing you're a beginner relative to others, or that to start a new hobby, which is where grit and a lot of the neurological underpinnings of mastery will be built, because you struggle at it. That's an important component of that. So in Japanese, they call it shoshin, or probably more correctly, shoshin no shin, beginner's mind. And the third of these components is, and remember, this is to sort of make it more fun, a lifetime of learning and mastery ahead if you choose to engage in it. That is, virtually all of these hobbies, almost anyone can begin doing almost immediately. However, you could spend the rest of your life mastering them. There is no upper limit. And that's where you can turn the hobby into something very gritty and challenging by striving through deliberate practice to actually reach a high level of excellence or expertise. So it's easy to get into with an unlimited ceiling. So there's always that challenge and the enjoyment that comes from struggling and then improving. That's a fundamental thing here involved in building grit. And what do these have at all to do with grit? Well, I've kind of explained that, but essentially what it is they all take practice and learning to improve, and significantly so in the case of many of these hobbies. Any idiot can do them. Not anybody can get really good at them. Or actually, that's not true. Almost anybody can get really good at them up to their maximum genetic potential, which most people never even approach. So most people could spend the rest of their lives getting better and better at any of these hobbies. And through that struggle, that is what produces grit and mastery, if you choose to do that. It's important to do that, though. You need to be working at the top edge of your ability at least sometime. So maybe you play a song you like with your musical instrument. It's fun, it's easy, but then you're also trying to improve your excellence at that song, make it more perfect, or learn new and more complex songs. That's where you're really going to build the grit, but you'll build more than that, which is also an underlying part and relationship between grit and mastery, and that is myelin. Myelin is the insulation. So you have like a body, the neuron, the cell body, and then a long extension cable, let's call it, which is connected to other neurons. And those are called axons. And in Daniel Coyle's book, The Talent Code, which you definitely should read, it talks about myelination. So myelin is the insulation that wraps around the axon, and it can increase the speed, the electrically conductive speed of that axon by as much as a factor of 100. But the physiological requirement to produce myelination is struggle. That is, you have to be trying hard. It's probably in that deliberate practice range of not necessarily fun because you're trying that hard. So if you're doing something easy and fun, that's all it is. It's fun and that's cool, but that will not build grit, that will not build mastery, and it will not build myelin. And then the other one, which is actually more associated with the beginning of developing a new skill and mastery, is neuroplasticity. And that is something in neuroscience called Hebb's law. And that is neurons that fire together, wire together. This is the reason when you go to the gym and you learn a new exercise, you get strong so fast, you go, wow, I built so much strength. Oh, it slowed down. Most of that strength building has nothing to do with an increase in the strength of your muscles, but everything to do with the neuroplasticity and the neuromuscular programming you do during the first part of trying a new exercise. That is, your brain is laying down, firing those same chains of neurons, that same network over and over again, and you get better quickly. That's neuroplasticity. It's actually changes in your brain and strengthening of connections, not the myelin, but basically your neurons will, the ones you fire together, the ones that work together to produce a chain of movement, like a skill, a physical skill, or even a mental skill, will wire together. So your brain's networks will become stronger and stronger by rewiring itself. And that's neuroplasticity, reshaping of the brain and the connections mostly at the beginning, and then myelin is more long-term to achieve mastery and excellence and grit. So if you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. And the final and recommended video for this is about meaning and how you can create meaning for anything. This is focused specifically on creating meaning for employees at work, but the same principles exactly are also relevant to creating meaning for any experience, personal or professional, and you can use it to find and create and make whichever hobbies you do, which are gritty and challenging or not, more meaningful and more fun for you and those you engage in them with. So I'll put the link for that right there. And this has been Crush It Club 142, Gritty and Challenging Hobbies of Successful People. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.